buckle up, everybody, because today we are taking a deep dive into First Chronicles.
Yeah, this one's a fascinating book.
It really is. Most people hear First Chronicles and they think, oh, great, another long list of names I have to try and remember.
Yeah, tons of genealogies.
And while it is true, there are a lot of genealogies.
For sure.
First Chronicles has so much more to offer.
You've got battles,
Intrigue,
political maneuvering.
even the nitty-gritty details of how they planned and built the temple in Jerusalem.
Yeah, one of the most important structures in all of ancient Israel.
It's all in there.
Mm.
And what we're going to do today is uncover what this book is really all about.
I think a lot of people miss the really important stuff in First Chronicles because they get bogged down in all the historical details.
Right. And we are going to try to avoid doing that today.
Absolutely.
So, First Chronicles. Why don't we start with like a high-level overview?
Yeah, sounds good.
So for anyone who maybe hasn't cracked open this book in a while,
Forever.
or ever,
It's a good place to start.
First Chronicles, it's part of the Hebrew Bible.
Hmm.
It comes right after the books of Samuel and Kings.
Sometimes called the former prophets.
And for centuries, scholars, theologians, they've been digging into this book.
Trying to understand its message.
Its historical context.
It's really a treasure trove of information about ancient Israel.
It is. So what we're going to try to do in this deep dive is kind of go beyond the surface level.
To ask the big questions.
But like, why does this book exist?
Why did someone decide to sit down and write this?
Who is it written for?
And what are they trying to tell us?
And as we go, I really want us to be thinking about how these ancient stories
Yeah.
connect to our lives today.
Because even though it was written thousands of years ago,
There are timeless themes in First Chronicles
for sure,
about lineage, about leadership, about faith
things that are still relevant.
that we can still learn from today.
Absolutely.
So,
Where do we start?
well, I think the obvious place to start is with all those genealogies.
Yeah, might as well just dive right in.
Right. Like I said, it's the first thing that people think of when they hear First Chronicles.
It's like the book opens with a giant family tree.
It does. And it's not just any family tree.
No, it's not your average Ancestry.com search.
This thing goes all the way back to Adam.
Adam and Eve, the very beginning.
So I think it's worth asking, like, why
Is this so important?
is so much of this book dedicated to just listing off names and lineages?
Oh.
It's got to be more than just a history lesson, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's about establishing legitimacy
Legitimacy.
of the Davidic dynasty. Remember, David is the star of the show in First Chronicles.
He is.
And this genealogy, it's like a carefully crafted legal document that's making the case for his right to the throne.
And it's not just about David himself, right?
No, it's about the whole line of kings that come after him.
So are you saying that this genealogy is basically saying, hey, look, David's family, they're the chosen ones. They're the ones God has appointed to rule over Israel.
Exactly. And by tracing his lineage all the way back to Abraham,
The father of the nation.
it connects David
To the covenant promises.
to the very heart of Israel's identity.
Which is so fascinating because you have to remember that this book was written centuries after David's reign.
Yeah.
So there were other people who might have had claims to the throne.
Rival dynasties.
Different factions vying for power.
And First Chronicles is basically shutting all that down.
It's saying, nope,
Ah.
the Davidic line, that's the one true lineage. End of story.
And it's all there right in the opening chapters.
Just in case you missed it.
Yeah, this is how important this is. We've
Picking
got the
up.
genealogy.
We've established why it matters.
What comes next?
Well, next we get into the meat of the story.
The reign of King David,
Now, most people probably know David from his younger years,
the shepherd boy,
the giant slayer.
the underdog who took down Goliath.
But First Chronicles kind of skips over all that.
It jumps right into his kingship,
His military victories,
political reforms.
and his incredible efforts to establish Jerusalem as the religious and political center of the kingdom.
Yeah, the book really emphasizes David's role in bringing the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem.
Right, which was this sacred chest.
That symbolized God's presence among his people.
And by bringing it to Jerusalem,
David was making a statement.
like Jerusalem is the place where heaven and earth meet.
It's the city where God has chosen to dwell.
And it's fascinating how First Chronicles really goes into detail about all the preparations David made for bringing the ark to Jerusalem.
Like he wasn't just going to throw it on a donkey and call it a day.
No, he organized these elaborate processions,
Sacrifice.
musical performances,
He wanted to do everything right.
because he knew that this wasn't just some ordinary event.
This was a pivotal moment in the history of Israel.
And you can really feel the weight of that moment
Mhm.
in the way First Chronicles describes it.
Absolutely.
And speaking of pivotal moments, one of the most important things that David did was start making preparations for the building of the temple.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
So David himself never actually gets to build the temple.
That task falls to his son Solomon.
But First Chronicles spends a ton of time detailing all the meticulous planning and preparation that David did,
Gathering materials,
organizing the Levites.
coming up with blueprints.
Like, he really pours his heart and soul into this project, even though he knows he won't see it finished.
It's kind of heartbreaking in a way.
It is. You wonder if he ever felt frustrated
Or disappointed.
that he wouldn't be the one to actually build this incredible structure.
But what really comes through is his unwavering faith and devotion.
He knew that the temple wasn't just a building,
It was the dwelling place of God.
the center of Israelite worship and identity. And for David, just the act of preparing for its construction was a deeply religious act.
Absolutely. It was a way for him to show his love for God,
His gratitude
his desire to create a space where God's presence could be felt in a tangible way.
is pretty powerful stuff.
It is.
And amidst all the kingly duties and the temple preparations,
First Chronicles doesn't shy away from showing us the more human side of David. Right? He's not just this perfect, larger-than-life figure.
we see his struggles,
His flaws,
his moments of doubt.
even his sin.
It's a much richer, more nuanced portrait than we might expect.
And I think it makes him even more relatable.
Yeah, because it reminds us that even the greatest figures in history,
They're still human.
they make mistakes.
They face challenges.
They experience the full range of human emotions.
And I think that's something we can all connect with.
Definitely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into First Chronicles, I just keep coming back to this question of why this book matters to us today.
Yeah, it was written thousands of years ago.
We're not building temples.
We're not fighting Philistines.
So what's the takeaway?
What can we learn from this ancient story?
Well, for me, one of the biggest things is this idea of legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like First Chronicles, it's all about tracing lineages.
Right.
Establishing connections between the past and the present.
It's showing how the actions of one generation,
Can have a ripple effect on the generations that come after.
absolutely, and I think that's something we can all relate to.
Whether we realize it or not.
We are all part of a larger story,
A chain of generations.
and our choices, the things we do, the things we build,
They have the power to shape the future.
and not just for ourselves, but for our children
Our grandchildren.
and the generations that come after us.
So it's a challenge
It is.
to think about the legacy we're leaving behind.
What values are we passing on?
What kind of world are we creating for the people who come after us?
It's a lot to think about,
It is.
but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree.
And maybe, just maybe, First Chronicles, it encourages us to bring that same passion and dedication
The same commitment to excellence,
that David had for the temple,
to our own temples,
whatever those might be,
our families,
our community,
our work,
anything that we pour our hearts and souls into.
anything that we want to leave as a lasting legacy for the future.
What do you think?
I think that's a great place to leave it.
Yeah.
Lots to ponder.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into First Chronicles,
And we'll see you next time.
for another deep dive into the scriptures.
Until then, keep digging,
And keep asking the big questions.
because there's always more to discover.
Absolutely.